Imagine, if you will, a school where kids are actually jazzed about learning. We're diving into this whole Alpha Schools thing,
Mhm.
which is this network of private schools in Texas that's making waves with this radical question.
Hmm.
Can we cram all the important academics
Yeah.
into just 2 hours a day?
And to really wrap our heads around it, we got to unpack the how, the what, the why behind this whole 2-hour learning thing. What we find in the research is this super interesting blend of personalized tech and this deep understanding of what makes kids tick engagement-wise.
And that's where all these articles we've got, and even digging deep into their website, it gets really interesting. We're not
Yeah.
just talking about like shorter school days. They're totally flipping the script on how education could work, should work.
Alpha Schools is tackling this thing that I think a lot of parents feel, which is that keeping kids engaged and fostering that love of learning that honestly a lot of traditional schools just crush out of them.
Oh, totally. One of the articles even mentioned the founder, Mackenzie Price. She felt like she was trying to steer the Titanic, that how impossible it felt to change the system.
Wow.
So she starts Alpha Schools in 2014 with just 16 kids in her house.
Oh, wow.
And now it's blown up into multiple campuses. Talk about putting your money where your mouth is.
Her story, I think it really speaks to this desire for something different, something more from education. Alpha Schools goes beyond, let's just chop off some hours from the school day. It's like they're transforming the entire experience.
So let's break it down. This 2-hour learning model, what's the secret sauce? Is it just kids glued to screens for 2 hours straight?
So, not at all. While they totally use AI-powered apps like Khan Academy for the massive library of content and IXL for its personalized practice stuff, the real thing that's changing the game is their AI tutor.
Okay, so they're not reinventing the wheel with the actual platforms, but this AI tutor, that's where the alpha in Alpha Schools comes in.
You got it. Think of it like a personal guide for every single student. The AI tutor creates a learning path that makes sense for each kid, tracks how they're doing in real time, and flags anything that's tripping them up where they might need extra help.
So it's almost like having a personal tutor for every subject, always adjusting to how the student is learning best.
100%. And this whole targeted approach, it's getting some crazy good results. I mean, Alpha Schools are claiming their students are learning 2 to 5 times faster than kids in traditional schools.
Whoa, 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 2 to 5 times faster. All right, now you've got my attention. Any real-world examples of this super speed learning?
Yeah, so there's this one from Brownsville, Texas. Second grade class using the Alpha model went from the 31st percentile in math, get this, to the 84th percentile in just 1 year.
Now that's what I call a glow up. That kind of improvement that fast, it really makes you wonder if we've been doing this whole school thing wrong forever.
I know.
It's one thing to say it works, but it's another to back it up. And the fact that they use standardized tests like MAP growth to keep track of how kids are doing, that's huge. But okay, let's be real. A 2-hour school day, what's happening the other 6 hours? Are we just sending these kids home after lunch?
So this is where things get really interesting, really alpha. Instead of seeing those extra hours as a problem, they dedicated that time to what they call limitless life skills workshops with names like Alpha Animation Studios, Alpha Consulting Group, even one called Lyrical Genius, where they mess around with music and self-expression.
Are these workshops all just for fun, or is there like a method to the madness?
Oh, they've got a whole system. They call it a test to pass. It's like students have to actually show they've learned stuff, tangible skills, to pass each workshop.
Okay, I like it.
For example, they might have a workshop about building inner strength.
Mm-hmm.
And to pass, they have to do this student triathlon.
A triathlon. Are we talking swim, bike, run, or is this some kind of Alpha Schools superpowered version?
Not quite like the Iron Man or anything,
Oh, right.
but it's still a challenge. We're talking like solving a Rubik's Cube, then they got to juggle something. And they finish it off with a half-mile run. They get that learning isn't just about memorizing a bunch of stuff. It's about being able to bounce back from setback.
They're setting them up for real life, not just the classroom. But okay, let's switch gears for a sec. What about the teachers and all this? Guiding kids through this crazy mix of academics and life skills, that's got to take a special kind of person, right?
Oh, absolutely. And Alpha Schools knows that the old school way of teaching just wouldn't fly here. So instead of teachers, they have what they call Alpha Guides.
Alpha guides. Okay, that sounds futuristic. What's the difference?
Think of them more like mentors. Facilitators, they're alongside the kids as they learn. They work hand in hand with the AI to personalize everything. Give extra help where it's needed, and really just ignite that love of learning.
So less about lecturing at the front of the classroom and more about guiding each kid on their own path.
It's about creating that environment where kids are excited to learn, to explore, to really take charge of their education.
And they've got a pretty impressive team to make it happen. One article mentioned Alex Kaiser. He's a big-time public speaking coach.
Oh, yeah?
Then there's Malu Delgado. She's been with Alpha since the beginning, back in Mackenzie Price's living room.
Wow.
And Gaston Griffin, he's bringing a decade of coaching experience to the table. It's like the dream team of educators.
Yeah, they've got it all.
But let's be real, something this different, this radical, there's got to be some people raising eyebrows, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the concerns people have about the alpha way of doing things?
One of the big ones, besides the whole cost thing, is this idea that maybe they're sacrificing depth for speed. Are they just skimming the surface of these subjects by cramming it all into 2 hours?
That's a fair point. I could see people wondering if that's really enough time to get into the nitty-gritty. How does alpha schools respond to that?
They're all about what they call a mastery-based approach. So instead of just rushing through the material on a schedule, kids focus on really understanding a concept before they move on, no matter how long it takes.
So it's less about checking boxes and more about making sure the kids actually get it.
Yeah, exactly. They use all the data from those standardized tests and the AI tutor to pinpoint someone might be struggling.
Okay.
And then, boom, the Alpha Guide swoops in with personalized help. It's about building a strong foundation, not just memorizing facts for a test.
It sounds like a much more personalized and tailored experience, kind of like what we were talking about with the AI tutor, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But let's address the elephant in the room here, the tuition. We can't ignore that. It's a big financial commitment for families. What are they doing to make this whole thing more accessible? They're definitely trying to find ways to close that gap. Mackenzie Price has mentioned looking into charter schools,
Right.
which would make it free for students. That'd be huge.
That would be awesome.
They're also developing a homeschooling program based on the Alpha model. And they're trying to make their 2-hour learning program more affordable, aiming for a price tag of $1,000 per year per kid.
That would make this kind of innovative approach available to so many more families.
Yeah, exactly.
That's huge. But what about, okay, this is another big one you always hear. What about socialization? With such a short school day, are kids missing out on just hanging out with each other?
It's a common worry. Socialization happens naturally in those project-based workshops they're doing.
Oh.
Think about it. They're working together. They have to learn how to communicate, how to deal with disagreements, how to work towards a shared goal. Those are all really valuable social skills.
It's not just about academics. They're picking up those essential life skills that you need to navigate, well, everything.
Yeah, for sure. And don't forget, they've got smaller class sizes than your typical school, so the kids are naturally going to form tighter bonds.
Right. That makes sense. You're spending your afternoons jamming on projects, brainstorming, sharing what you're passionate about. That's bound to create some strong connections.
Exactly.
But okay, what about high school? Because that's a whole other beast, right?
It is.
There's so much emphasis on social events, extracurriculars, just being a teenager. How does Alpha schools approach that whole phase?
It's interesting. Mackenzie Price understands that high school has this whole mystique around it.
Yeah.
And they haven't totally ditched those rituals and traditions. They've just given them an Alpha Schools twist.
Yeah. So they're not trying to recreate the typical high school experience. It's more about offering something uniquely Alpha.
Exactly. They still have events like prom, but then they also have these crazy opportunities that you wouldn't find in most high schools. Imagine high schoolers getting to record their own albums or being in these Broadway caliber musicals.
It's not just an add-on, it's woven into the fabric of their education.
And that's where their whole high school approach is so cool. Instead of treating extracurriculars as this separate thing, they're like, hey, this is an extension of your learning. Run with it.
Did they have any examples of students who are really thriving in that kind of environment?
Yeah, totally. There's this one kid, he's super into music, and he's using his time at Alpha School to write, record, even produce his own stuff. He's already got tracks online. People are listening.
That is incredible. He's not just learning about music in a textbook. He's out there living it.
And then there's this other student. She's passionate about filmmaking. She's working on a documentary about the environment, but she's not just learning about cameras and editing. She's using those skills to talk about an issue she cares about.
They're bridging the gap between education and the real world, giving these kids a chance to make a real impact. That's powerful.
But of course, no educational approach is perfect, right? What are some of the challenges or downsides that people have pointed out about Alpha School's methods?
There are always two sides to every story.
One critique is that it might not be the best fit for every kid. For students who are already super driven and know what they're passionate about, great. But what about the kids who are still figuring things out?
That's fair. Not every kid walks in with a fully formed business plan or a novel they're dying to write. Some kids need a little more guidance.
That's where those alpha guides come in, remember. They're trained to help those students figure out what makes them tick, to explore different things. It's all about creating that safe space to try new things, to maybe even fail sometimes without feeling like you're a total failure.
It's about nurturing everyone's potential, no matter where they are on their journey.
And they totally get that finding your passion is a process, not a destination.
It's so important to create that kind of environment where kids feel safe to experiment, to explore, to find their own way.
And with all this talk about individualized learning and passion projects,
Mm.
some people might worry that Alpha Schools just throws the whole traditional system out the window. Are these kids still hitting those academic benchmarks? Are they ready for college if that's what they want?
I can see that. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of these innovative approaches and forget about the practical stuff.
Totally. But that's where their obsession with data comes in. Remember all those standardized tests they use to track progress? That's not just for fun. They're using those results to make sure their students are meeting or even blowing past those national standards, even with this whole new approach they've got.
So it's not just about feeling good and following your bliss. They're proving that their model actually gets results. That's huge.
They're not shying away from those traditional measures of success. They're embracing them. And they're showing the world that you can have a truly transformative educational experience and still hit those academic targets.
So they're not just sending kids out there with a head full of dreams and a portfolio of passion projects. They're giving them the tools to navigate those traditional pathways if that's what they choose.
All right. It's about giving them the power to create their own definition of success, whether that's college, starting a business, becoming an artist, whatever lights them up.
It really makes you question everything we thought we knew about education, doesn't it? What if we gave them the tools to use their unique talents to make the world a better place?
It's a question we should all be asking as we try to figure out what education should look like in the 21st century. A future where learning isn't just about cramming information.
It's a powerful vision and one that I hope we can all learn from. Maybe, just maybe, Alpha Schools is onto something truly extraordinary.